Welcome to this short interview with Professor Hamington. He will give a lecture at the University of Humanistics here in Utrecht, the Netherlands. The lecture is about performative theory of care. So, first question for you, Professor Hamington. Can you introduce yourself shortly and tell something about your latest work?
Sure. I'm Maurice Hamington. I am the Executive Director for University Studies at Portland State University in Portland, Oregon. University Studies is like their general education. So I oversee all the general education for undergraduates, and I am a care ethicist, and my latest work, and I'm a philosopher, and my latest work is an edited anthology with Dan Engster called Care Ethics and Political Theory, and it brings together many of the important political theorists, philosophers, and also some lawyers and others to talk about care ethics and where the field is going today.
Okay. So what are, according to you, burning issues for ethics of care now and in the future? And how would you like to draw attention to those issues?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to think about the burning issues. In one respect, the burning issue is to get ethic of care known more by more people. It's still a somewhat marginalized field. There are a lot of scholars who don't understand it or don't deal with it very much, and I think we want that to expand. There are particular concerns about what actually does care ethics mean, what does it mean in different fields, what is the approach? Is it, should it be more theoretical? Should it be more applied? Should it be both? It's actually in some ways a very intriguing time in care ethics because we're at the nascent stages of what could be a very blossoming discipline. It's only 30 years old, and in the scope of many disciplines that are even thousands of years old, it's relatively new, so it's kind of exciting.
It is. And do you have any recommendation for the Dutch ethics of care to focus on, like issues?
Well, for the Dutch, in many ways, are ahead of the game in certain places, because you have a program at the University of Humanistic Studies that is coalesced into a community, and we don't have anything similar in the States, and I don't think it exists in Europe, elsewhere in Europe as well. And so I think it would be mostly to engage the rest of the world, to show everybody what you're doing, and grow what is already kind of an exciting program here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Hamington. Care has a radical potential, you claim. Can you please explain us how?
I think that sometimes people think about care and it sounds like something that is very personal and between a few people, but it also has this kind of internal radicalism to it, because if you truly engage others' care and connect with other people, that can be a kind of disruptive knowledge to somebody. It can be very motivating kind of thing, and it can energize people to act on their behalf. And so I think that in some senses all radical movements historically have had an element of care in them. Maybe it wasn't explicitly named in that way, but I think it was there, and I think the same is true going forward.
Thank you very much. Can you please illustrate your definition of care and with an example? I quote your definition.
Okay.
It's a long one, but a beautiful one. Care is a political embodied performance, every iteration of which has the potential to contribute to our dynamic sense of moral identity, adds to our disruptive knowledge of the other, and supports the notion that ethical understanding is a mind-body activity that's ripe for our auto-poetic development.
Okay. Yes, it's a long one, and academics, they like to use a lot of words. So with an example, I would say, let's say that a student comes into a teacher's office and she's crying, and the instructor could react in many different ways. One way would be to say, give the person a tissue and say, go home and take care of yourself, or but another way would be to engage the individual in questions and find out what the source of the distress is, and possibly respond and take caring actions. And in that example, I think we see the various elements there. The caring for the other person, making those decisions, and going deep. There's a kind of a skill there in an emotional intelligence that is demonstrated. And like any other skill, there are physical and cognitive elements to that skill. And people can develop that skill, and they can perform at that skill better. Some people are more skilled at doing those kinds of things. And what's interesting about human beings is we are able to be both subjects and objects. So when I perform, or anybody performs an act of caring, it's not just for other people to see. Other people can, who are there, who are present, can see it. I see it in myself. I see myself in this caring. And if it is an ideal for me, if I do bring good habits, cognitive habits, and reflective habits to it, I can get better at it, and the next time I do it, I might do it better, and the iterations of it can seep into my identity and become more of who I am. And therefore, I may begin to think of myself as more of that, the caring person who takes the time to ask these questions and respond to somebody better. So I think that's a way to try to, kind of embody that definition.
Thanks for the example. It's a good one. Because then I bring it back to daily practice. Are you not worried that daily aspects of caring, like cleaning up vomit, are aestheticized or forgotten in this manner?
Well,
when you see art as a performance, like theater.
Yeah. So I think that care is a performance, and it is there's an aesthetic quality to it, but it is not always easy. It is often very challenging, very difficult, and as you say, cleaning up vomit can feel very removed from what we think is,
reflection, deliberation,
right? All those kinds of things, but it becomes part of the whole process. And so I think it's easy to forget that you're caring for somebody when you're doing something like that. But it is a piece of the whole. And there's I never want to claim that care is always beautiful and and lovely and fun, there's a lot of difficult
Hard work,
parts to it.
yes.
Yes.
Thanks. The next question is, care ethics not only helps to understand and identify the subjectively lived experience, but also through the political lens to understand how identities and subject positions become constructed or rendered invisible within policy. If I look through the lens of vulnerability to caring society, I can see citizens being excluded. I believe identity is also about belonging. How can a society care for excluded people?
Well, I think what comes along with care is a requirement to be truly responsive and understanding of the other.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes the power and privilege that they have in whatever subject position they're at. And so to be truly caring is to ask questions, is to seek knowledge. There's a certain way that care is a form of inquiry, really.
Yes.
And so you would be engaging people to understand that oppression, make the human connection, and take actions that you see, accordingly. So I think that's another way, going back to an earlier question, that there is this kind of radical potential in care, because it can help us build solidarity with marginalized individuals.
Thank you. In the reality of complex care practices, a nurse spends a lot of time behind the computer, with questionnaires about targets and quality from the game discourse, instead of engaging herself with the ill, not to mention deliberating on her moral identity, and often her performance is invisible. How can our society open up her visibility?
I think we need to have more conversations. Again, I think it's beautiful that the University of Humanistic Studies has this program. We need to bring care front and center and talk about how important caring is to the flourishing of any society. It seems that more and more there is evidence growing that the old stories that we talked about how society was, the kind of dog-eat-dog individuals fighting against one another, have been replaced by notions that it's through cooperation, compassion, empathy. That's what's allowed societies to flourish. And yet we still don't always value that as much as it should be. I know that's particularly true in the States. And so I think that if we put care front and center, then we value the work of all the individuals who are engaging in care, even when it's not particularly visible.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.